We have the hugely anticipated Elves Falath Evo 2023 in our hands. We get Rob's opinion from Carbon Bike Repair UK on something I observed.
Not required to be that thick.
We cover loads of points highlighted in Cam Nichols' video, such as the tight seat post tolerances and the tyre clearance. Not to mention the bottom bracket, the headset checks, as well as looking inside with an endoscope to see what this very unique looking Elves Falath Evo 2023 looks like on the inside.
What the hell is that?
If you haven't seen it, previously I built a full superbike using the 2022 model of this frame, the Falath Pro, which led me to this moment in time. So it'll be interesting to see how this Falath Evo compares and also show you guys the full build process, which is coming very soon. The frame was well packed, not a chance of it moving around in the box like a ping pong machine. The forks are laid flat on the bottom, nice and flat, like a bed for the chunky frame waiting to be unveiled. The seat post has quite a unique design and you can see its thick stem, or should I say tubing. I reckon I could probably bash the bottom bracket in with this thing, it's an absolute weapon. The clamp on top looks pretty fancy as well. It's giving me Transformer vibes. The Aero Evo bars are quite the conversation starter. You might fall head over heels for their sleek design, or they may not be your cup of tea. One thing's for sure though, these bars are fully integrated for cable routing, making them an excellent match for electronic group sets. That's of course if you haven't already blown your entire budget on the frame set itself. At £185 or $220, these bars are an additional expense to consider when purchasing the frame, but we'll dive into the full cost later in the video. The forks are next out the box, which gives us a chance to see the colours, which are popping by the way. More on the custom paint job later because there are hundreds of combinations to choose from and it's super cheap. Another nice touch are the instructions that come wrapped around the forks. Now I'm sure this will be helpful given the intricate design of the headset. Now for the frame. As I unwrapped this stylish chameleon painted very fat frame, it glistened under the lights in this cold shed in the pouring rain. But seriously though, it's looking very nice indeed. As I always do, I gave the frame a quick once over, and let me tell you, the Elves Falath Evo 2023 has outdone itself in the design department, and this is actually one of their standard offerings. They also have all the accessories, which include a bottom bracket with ceramic bearings, a headset with a compression plug, as well as 3 10mm headset spacers and all the frame inserts. It's nice to see the headset spacers are plastic and they can come apart as well to make it easier to install once the integrated cables have already been installed. There was also this travel size grease and carbon grip. Don't get them confused or you'll be slipping where you should be gripping. The caliper mounts on the fork look like they have been faced. I whipped out the screws that came in the forks, and as you can see, they are. It's the same for the rear caliper mount as well. You can see the location where the caliper sits is free from paint, making a nice mating surface. I always like to look at the rear derailleur hanger as well. I've seen previously where the bike has been painted, then the hanger is installed, but it's too tight because of the depth of the paint. This is not the case here though, and you can see everything is looking good. The paint on the head tube is all good with no imperfections. The tubing is noticeably thick. You can really see this thickness when you stare the frame down the eye. There is also no paint overspray in the bearing cups, which is a good sign. I removed the plastic cover around the headset that's currently sitting proud like a dolphin's nose, and underneath there wasn't much to report, just some more hefty tubing. The pattern on the top tube might not tickle everyone's fancy, but you've got to admit the paint job is looking absolutely fabulous. I've been examining this frame with the intensity of Inspector Gadget on a top secret mission. We also have instructions on where to clamp the frame, which is good to see so people don't accidentally crush the large tubes. We can also see the 10 to 12 Newton meter marking for the seat post lock-in bolt. This has to be the biggest tube that I have seen on a bike before, and when handling the frame I noticed that I could actually press the sides in slightly. Vertically it's unbelievably stiff though, so don't get me wrong. I thought I'd ask Rob from Carbon Bike Repair, as I've not seen tubing this big before, and this is what he said.
Your down tube is what I call weight shaving. They won't bother with the construction values of a frame until the stylistic designer has completed the bike. So what tends to happen is then the engineers come in and they decide how thick that bike should be versus how heavy that bike should be. Generally speaking, if a down tube such as the one you showed me is large, then the overall construction of that tube is not required to be that thick. The forces are displaced over a larger area. Where they do stiffen the frame is the top and the bottom of the tube is generally slightly thicker material, or just merely the fact that that area is more narrow and therefore stiffer and not able to flex as much as a larger flat surface area, which is what you expect. It's quite normal amongst many frames that we see, even some of the really good ones. I don't see a safety issue there.
A big thanks to Rob for this input, and as he said, all is good, no issues. Now if I direct your attention to the seat tube, you'll notice the UCI Approved badge. Oh, the glory. The prestigious seal of approval means not a whole lot to me personally, but hey, it's always a plus to know that the higher ups in the cycling world have given this frame their stamp of approval. I would say it's elevated this frame in the world of cycling to the next level once that sticker has been gracefully placed on the frame. We have the braze-on type front derailleur hanger secured with 2 bolts. There is a little rubber grommet, which I believe is for Di2 as well. We also have the exit for the front gear cable if you are not so fortunate to have electronic gears. The seat stays and chain stays remind me of wings for some reason. Both are looking good, and we can see the inserts where the rear brake and rear gear cables will exit the frame. The bottom bracket is looking good with no overspray on the faces where the bearings will sit. Honestly, it is great to see no overspray. It's a level of detail that really gets me excited. Yes, I do know I'm strange. The paint on the forks is also good. No overspray on the crown race either. How wonderful. The seat post is a seat post. Nice to see it has a matte finish, which is more grippy than the gloss seat posts that I've seen. The handlebars are a mixture of gloss and matte paint, which I like. It gives it a little va-va-voom. All the bar measurements are also on the bars, which is helpful indeed. When it comes to customization, you have a good range of options from Elves. There are 10 different paint templates and a selection of 54 colours, providing even more variety. And best of all, custom paint is only £60. So for the same price as an Ultegra cassette, you can have a fully custom painted frame. 2 + 2 is 5. Onto the first hurdle, the seat post tolerance. This was mentioned in Cam Nichols' video as they had issues when installing their seat post. Firstly, this seat post has been inside the frame, or a seat post has been inside, which is a good sign because someone has checked and given it the once over. When offering it up, the seat post slid into the frame without much resistance. When lowered down, it did grip tight. But then I noticed the taper of the frame is where the seat post is gripping. You can see where I put the seat post side by side with the frame that the seat post can't be inserted past the 10 measurement. Now I'm guessing you don't want it that low, and if you do, you'd probably want to be on a smaller frame. There are loads of sizes for this frame, so do check that out when you are purchasing. This is a size 52. I am 176 centimeters tall. I went for a 52 because I got a 52 in the previous model. So now I can mount the bike in the stand using the seat post. Heaven forbid I use the chunky tubes, or the bike police will come swarming in the comments, wagging their fingers at me, and well, they'd be right. The bottom bracket, the hot gossip of the cycling world. Fingers crossed the holes aren't oval, because who needs that kind of geometry chaos in their life? Let's get technical. This frame has a press fit PF30 bottom bracket. So the size of the bearing that fits inside the hole is 46 millimeters, and the width overall of the bottom bracket is 68 millimeters. I whipped out my trusty vernier caliper, which, let me tell you, has measured more bottom brackets than the number of packed lunches I've ever had. Quite the seasoned veteran. But before I put those jaws to work, I gave the left surface a little feel, and oh boy, it's as smooth as silk. Trust me, I've caressed my fair share of bottom brackets. Never thought I'd say that on camera, and this one is definitely up there with the best of them. I'm going to take 8 measurements in a circle. I know I'll be duplicating measurements, but the more the merrier. You can see all of the measurements that I took on screen here. Now if we look at the average measurement, we have 46.075, which is pretty good considering the bottom bracket shell is 46 millimeters. This will hopefully slide in and be a good fit. I then flip the bike around and I'm reminded that this frame is much lighter than it actually looks. Looking at the right bearing cup, I can see that it's the same as the left. Super smooth. There is no cavities, roughness, and overall I'm happy with what I'm seeing. With the caliper, I took another 8 measurements, rotating 1/8 of a turn each time. Overall, the average was 46.1, so a hair width larger than the left side. I'm interested to hear what you guys think about this Toray T800 and T1000 carbon fiber frame. The more I handle it, look at it, the more I like its unique design. But as you know, I'm a sucker for things that break the mold, pun intended, or go against the grain. There are little details like all the torque values listed on the website, the sizing actually displayed on the frame, the headset setup listed on the forks. Right now it's feeling more refined than the 2022 Falath Pro. With all these little intricacies covered off, it is better suited for a direct-to-consumer sale, making it easier for us mere mortals to put this thing together. One of the big points on Cam Nichol's video was the clearance between the tyre and the frame. We are going to test this with a 32mm tyre, which is the largest supported for this frame, and a 25mm tyre, which is probably the smallest that people will use in this day and age. You know what that means though? Tyre install. Where's Johnny when you need him? Full video coming on these Aero wheels from Elves in the near future, by the way. Installing the 32mm tyre into the frame, we can see that there is a finger width of clearance between the tyre and the frame. If we swap that out and look at the 25mm tyre, we can see that there's room for a couple of fingers. Very technical measurement there. When you look at them side by side, you can see the difference in the gap. Now it's noticeable, but the big question is, does it really matter? Now here are my 2 cents. Are you ready? People often discuss the aero benefits of having the rear wheel closer to the frame. To be honest, I haven't delved deep enough into this topic, nor is it a top priority for me when purchasing a frame. If I had to choose between tight gap and room for larger tyres, I'd definitely opt for the latter. It's worth noting that closing that gap can lead to a more aerodynamic setup, potentially cutting drag by a small amount. However, this benefit may only be significant for professionals racing aiming to shave off precious milliseconds. Truth be told, until I watched Cam's video, I hadn't even give this aspect much thought at all. All you pro racers out there, feel free to share your insights in the comments. But for the average cyclist, the gap between the frame and the rear wheel may not have a noticeable impact on performance. Instead, factors like comfort, tyre clearance and versatility might hold more importance for everyday riders. Whether or not it looks worse or better, I'll let you be the judge. When looking at the headset, I noticed that there was this cable dampening inside the frame, a very nice touch, and this is the type of thing that you forget to buy, as I've forgotten on my last 3 builds. You fool. The bearing for the top and bottom are 1.5 inch, which is 52mm, and on the website it mentions that they are both 7mm deep. However, when measured, there is an 8mm and a 6mm bearing. I'm going to take the fork as the source of truth and ignore the website. The bearing surface on the top of the headset is all good, no overspray and super smooth. The bearing slid in there nicely with no play. I wanted to take 8 measurements, but the old dolphin's nose is in the way of the caliper. I did take 4 measurements and we have 52.2, 52, 52.2 and 52.2. So all are pretty close in size and will be good for the 52mm bearing, I hope. A quick flip of the frame 180 degrees. I do love this stand. And we can try the 8mm bearing in the bottom. Again, it was a good fit and slid in without any issues. There was no play when giving it a good old wiggle. I then took 8 measurements and the average of all those measurements was 52.25, and there was only a 0.2mm difference between the smallest and the largest. So again, looking pretty good. With my endoscope, we can see that the head tube is looking pretty good. Nice and neat around the bearings with no sharp pieces, ready to give those delicate soft hands something to worry about. You can see the bolt that secures that piece of plastic around the headset. I went to go and look in the top tube, then realized that there was no way in. The back is blocked around the seat tube, which is pretty standard, and this is the other end of the tube. So I aborted mission and moved on to the down tube, which was a little more exciting. On the entrance to the down tube from the headset, you can see some of the plastic bladder that was used in the production process, which is nothing to worry about. From this angle, you can really see how slim and tall this down tube is. You can see both the inserts for the bottle cages, which are looking good without carbon shards poking around everywhere. In general, the carbon is looking good, not much to report, which is a good thing. Looking into the seat tube like a nosy neighbour, we can see that everything is looking good there as well. We have more bolts which are for the bottle cage mounts, and we have extra bolts here which are for the front derailleur hanger. As we reach the end of the seat tube, we are looking down on the bottom bracket and we can see it's looking pretty neat and clean as well. No real wrinkling, nothing that stands out. Inside the fork stereo, we can see what looks like a few pieces of plastic bladder. Again, nothing to worry about. We can also see the cable guide. This is what routes the cable from the entry down by the caliper to the hole in the steerer tube. The seat post looks good. Inside you can see how much carbon is in there. It's basically a solid chunk where the clamp is. Absolute unit. The seat post has a claim weight of 250 grams and mine weighed 260 grams. So all good there. The forks have a claimed weight of 415 grams and mine were 465 grams. Then we have the bars with that wide, chunky stem. I couldn't see a claimed weight on the site, probably because there are so many combinations or I'm blind. Mine weighed in at 413 grams. Then the main event, the frame. It has a claimed weight of 1,075 grams and mine weighed in, drumroll please, at 1,220 grams. So a little over the claimed weight, which could be all the cable guides that are inside and all the inserts, etc. That gives us a grand total of 2,358 grams. Not gonna lie, I could probably lose a kilogram of winter hibernation fat, so who am I to judge a frame for a few extra grams here and there. The frame is currently on offer for £899 from the UK store and $1,100 from the global store. There is no rim brake option. Sorry, rim brake lovers. The UK distributor for Elves have been very helpful in getting this frame and the wheel set, to be honest, sent to me for review, so a big thank you to them. They also sell full builds on their website, so drop them a message if you want to get your hands on a frame or a complete build, depending if you like wrenching your frame together or not. Now click here to see the full build on the Elves Falath Pro, which is a 2022 predecessor to this frame. It was quite an eventful journey and you'll see further insight into the Elves frames.